So I got this comment on my YouTube channel and I wanted to address it because apparently ChatGPT didn't tell the whole story. I asked ChatGPT if Trump could have fired Fauci in 2020. No, he couldn't have. The answer was not likely. However, and this is what Trump could have done to nullify Fauci and save the country from COVID communism. Trump could have reassigned Fauci or reduced his influence in decision making by limiting his role in task forces or policy discussions. Additionally, Trump could have replaced the Secretary of Health and Human Services or other political appointees overseeing NIAID, which might have indirectly affected Fauci's responsibilities. Too bad he didn't. Well, no, he did. He did do something. ChatGPT forgot about how Trump did assign Dr. Scott Atlas. Yes, so and the news, so here, people forget that when Trump went in and fired James Comey, the media went ballistic. So at that time, most people, especially being afraid, locked in their homes, okay, everything was hanging. I mean, Fauci was a media hog, okay, every night, all over every channel, just his narcissistic face everywhere. 2 masks, 1 mask, even though back in the day he wrote a paper how they had learned from, what was it, the Spanish flu or one of the plagues back in the day, that making people walk around in masks wasn't a good idea because you're just breathing back in your own toxins. Fauci himself had written about it. But he did assign Scott Atlas, and nobody wanted to listen to him. The media raked him over the coals, raked Trump over the coals for doing it. When Trump fired James Comey, the whole country went ballistic about that he's trying to be a dictator. The country was not ready for that. So no, even if he would have done all of that, it would not have changed anything because the country had already for 3 years been told what a dictator Trump was, even though he wasn't at all. He kept saying, I watched those news conferences up until I couldn't anymore, which was but he was in that press conference room with Fauci and Dr. Birx for like 3 hours at a time, making sure that people, like, come on. He was asking Fauci questions. What did they do when Trump said about the bleach? Then they ran all over the media, nighttime, talk show hosts saying that Trump told people to drink bleach. No, he was saying how, like, is there a way to put, when he talked about light into the body, that was not, I understood what he was talking about because when we have most hospitals, some hospitals, when there's an infectious room, like airborne, after the patient's discharged, they don't just clean it as they clean it as normal, but then they bring in this like rollaway lights that's like what you'd find in a tanning, UV lights. Close the room up, and for like 20 minutes, it just kills everything. That light, remember he was talking about light into the body. Yeah. And vitamin D would have been good instead of having people out in the sun, instead of having people locked up in their house. But he never told people to drink bleach. Everything he said, he was trying to tell people, look into this. And he was the one that initially said HCQ. And I actually, that's when, and then shortly after that, Frontline Doctors had formed. They like broke off from all the narrative bullshit, and you were able to schedule an appointment with them online or by phone. And I had gotten that for 6 months prophylactically. So he ended up being right about that. So, but nobody was willing to hear it. The media made fun of him. But he did everything he could, and I'm surprised. Well, no, I'm not. It's ChatGPT. It's not OpenAI. But he did assign Dr. Scott Atlas, and he was a reasonable doctor. But they didn't want to give him any, like, Fauci found that offensive, because he's been in that role since the 80s. He was involved in, he was involved in the whole AIDS thing. He was the doctor then involved in that. And so he's been in that role. He's the highest paid person in Washington, Fauci. So he couldn't have likely gotten rid of him. Trump wouldn't have had trouble doing that, but the country would have went crazy. The country was not ready. That's why Trump has said during this last 4 years, this is why we've needed this pause for 4 years. So you can see what's going on. So you can wake up. And he said in rallies, so that when we go in, when we get in again, we can do what we need to do and the public will understand. In 2020, the public was not understanding. The public was being made because of the disgusting terrorist media, because they were horrible. They were absolutely horrible to Trump, I would have been calling people so many names. The names he called people were so silly kind of names, but people wanted to say he was so mean. No, the way the media and late night was to him and his family was horrendous. Horrible people they were, horrible. They were disgusting, yet to this day they still don't apologize for what trash they were. But when he fired James Comey, shortly after he got in, and that was deservedly so, James Comey was the head of the FBI. The media had convinced people this is what Trump's going to do. So he couldn't have done that, not most especially in the middle of a crisis when people are being made afraid. What he did try to do was tell people. He was asking Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, what about this? What about that? And they kept trying to, act like they didn't know what he was talking about. And come to find out, most everything he said was correct. But he was doing everything he could to get the public. That's when I started realizing, no, there's more. When I knew something was wrong just because of how bad the media was. But before that, but once the COVID hit, I thought, what is this is insanity what's going on. This is totally insane, the country being locked down. And he kept saying the cure cannot be worse than the virus. What ended up happening? Cure was worse. Because it went on. In the blue states, they stayed locked down for 2-3 years. It ended up causing more harm. I knew the minute they did lockdowns, I'm like, what mental health crisis there will be, the fallout of that will be because of this. This isn't the way we handle things. But this was all about control. Fauci wasn't happy once you were wearing one mask. He needed to find out if you were willing to wear 2 masks. It doesn't matter if you wear 2 masks. A virus is smaller than smoke that goes through those masks. Smoke can go through them, 2 of them. And a virus is smaller than that. You'd have to walk around in an N95 all day long, and you can't walk around in those. They're too uncomfortable. Barely handle it for 30 minutes wearing an N95 because they're so tight and they hurt. But no, he did do something. He did everything he could. The country was not ready to see it. The COVID communism came from the governors, most especially the blue governors. Hell, in Michigan, Trump had nothing to do with Governor Whitmer not wanting people to buy seeds in Walmart. Every big box store stayed open. Every bar stayed open. Every weed store stayed open. But nothing else. Everybody else, restaurants, everything else had to close. The gyms. So the country was not ready. That's why he said this past 4 years under Biden, maybe the country will see. Then we can go in and actually fire people and not have and then the media, if they carry on. Now he has a mandate. He can go in, he'll do what he needs to do. The country now sees the truth. So it's not exactly fair because he appointed Dr. Scott Atlas to work alongside Fauci, and Fauci carried on like a crybaby because of it. And what came to be found out about Fauci? Oh, well, it was NIH that was funding Wuhan lab where the virus just happened to be released from and where they were doing gain-of-function research. So Trump knew all that at the time, but the public didn't. The public, all they did was make fun of Trump.